welcome back to the Kingsway Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. I have a couple special guests with us today. We have a few missionary partners at Kingsway, but we are glad to have Erica and Maurice White here today, all the way from Africa.
Yeah.
And they're here in town mainly because they got a new delivery to their house. Stork dropped off baby Dumbo. I mean, a new baby.
Yep.
And so what is this baby's name? Let's just start there because I know it's a little unique.
Yes, Benaiah.
Benaiah. Now, what does Benaiah mean?
Well, Benaiah, we got Benaiah obviously from, Old Testament scripture. Benaiah is one of David's mighty men, and so we want our son to be a tough dude since we're in Kenya. So
And Benaiah in scripture, killed a lion, so,
in a pit on a snowy day.
So from Kenya.
Yeah, so we don't have snow in Kenya, but,
No snow, but we got lions and we got pits.
That is so
we have hail
cool.
occasionally.
Well,
so.
and you guys work with a tribe that the people that's kind of their like test of manhood, right? Is to go out
and kill a lion.
What was the name of that tribe again?
Yeah, so the Maasai tribe
Maasai,
is who we work with.
Yep. So that's kind of cool. All that ties together. I know when I heard that, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I get it. It's so cool. Well, we have partnered with you guys for a few years and done this kind of cool campaign through November where we've gotten to see not only God do some amazing things in the hearts of our people to kind of raise some funds and stuff, but the cooler side of it is watching those funds actually have kind of a way deeper impact than they ever could, I think, without God's intervention and your guys' obedience to follow. So it's fun to be here again and like catch up a little bit. I don't know exactly where I want to start because there's so many things that I'm like, so how did last year go? And this has been a very unique 18 months for us in the States. It's been a very different thing. I have a lot of friends that traveled and the rest of the world. We were just talking off camera before we started. It's like disease is kind of a common thing in Africa. So I think the way it's treated is a little different.
Yeah.
So did COVID affect you guys in any way, or was there some times where you're like, well, this changed some things?
This year, the biggest challenge with COVID, honestly, were our teams.
Yeah.
So because part of our ministry is one of the main pieces is we bring teams to that work with us, so they come and stay at our camp and all of that. Well, you have to be tested, of course, before you leave the U.S., and then you have to be tested before you leave Kenya. So at one point, we actually hired a guy to come out to the very deep bush in the Maasai Mara to come and test us in the middle of nowhere, our team, to make sure they get back. So that kind of thing is what we came up against the most. Yeah. But thankfully, in the bush, things are pretty much back to normal.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that. I know the last time we talked, you guys had so much rain that you were just feeding people.
Yes.
And the last time we talked, you were like, we're not even trying to plant church. We're trying to make sure these kids just get food.
Yes.
And these people, these villages, and you were using,
Yes.
a couple trucks to do that. And all your pictures were basically look like you were walking through some sort of Florida swamp.
It was.
It was like a desert around you. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Yes.
Has that settled down? Has infrastructure gotten back? Okay.
Yeah, so it has. We haven't really had that much rain, and we're pretty much back to doing what we normally do. Which is, preach the word of God and plant churches.
That's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
I know the influence that grew out of just the obedience to meet needs. You guys were talking about, you thought a lot of seeds had been planted, and there was great opportunity for, more fruit and harvest. So I love hearing that.
Well, and I was going to say, too, about that this year, what's been cool this year is that there have been people, we'll be out in, it seems to us like middle of nowhere, and some Maasai will walk up to Maurice and say, hey, you came to my home and
delivered food.
Thank you.
We specifically had a guy, and we were able to come back to these areas that we delivered food. But we'll have a guy come to us who just got saved and was like, hey, do you remember me? And I'm like, man, brother, I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
And then he'll be like, well, you came to my village when we were hungry and gave us food. And so we're like, oh, it's our pleasure.
So that's been cool this year, seeing that.
Kind of fulfilled.
That's a unique thing that, I preached this last week on Romans. This all God works through all things, to create good. And I'm like, I could just tell that it wasn't your favorite season because there was a lot of like frustrating small things that you're like, why is a truck the thing that is keeping me, or why is this Land Rover or whatever? Yeah. Why are the roads so terrible? It's like taking me 10 hours.
Right.
But I feel like pushing through a lot of that was an expression of love that was easily interpreted. across cultural lines, across language barriers. And then ultimately, I think it just opened doors.
Yeah.
Oh, it did.
Which is, it's the way God works.
Right.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
Right.
So now you're in this new season. It sounds like, obviously COVID's a thing that we're going to have, I think, for a long time.
Yeah.
I personally had it and it was awful.
Yeah.
But, there's way worse things out there. We were just talking about malaria that's super common over there.
Right.
And I just can't
Yeah.
imagine. I can't imagine being like, yeah, I don't want to get malaria either. So, so after coming through that and coming through the floodwaters, which sounds like you guys are Noah, and now you're in this new season of planting. Like, what are you most excited about moving forward here? Like, what's new? Obviously your baby.
Yeah.
And this is the first time you guys are away from him.
This is it.
So you got the phone on.
And my mom texted me earlier. He's asleep. So we're
That's so good. And I want to talk about parenthood at some point, but I want to hit your ministry first.
Yeah.
Like, what are you very excited about when you get back on January 5th? What are you hoping God's going to do? What are you excited to see?
Yeah.
So our latest kind of campaign that we did is we actually went up into the Loyada Hills. A few times actually this year.
Mm-hmm.
We did it twice, and we have just seen some amazing results up there. People are just so receptive. We've seen a lot of witch doctors and stuff come to know Jesus. Yeah. So the culture up there, it's very much traditional Maasai because it is so far out. I mean, in order to go there, you have to be purposeful. Like, you're going to the Loyada Hills, and there's nothing touristy up there, so they don't see any tourists going to look at lions or anything. Even though they're up there, that's not where they're going to see them. And so it very much to me looked like what I feel like Africa looked like in the 20s. And so it was just a very cool experience to be able to go up there. We've actually just planted
I think two churches up there.
Two churches.
How far away is that from your home base?
It's about 4 to 5 hours, depending on the roads.
And I was going to say, that's, distance-wise for us, 4 to 5 hours is like 500 miles.
Yeah, no, it's actually not like crazy. Yeah, if you as a crow flies, it's not horrible. But the roads are just and awful. Even like in ministry, going out to the bomas and bomas are the collection of homes that the Maasai live in, and so even going to those, we would reach a point where the road of what you would call a road would stop, but there's still bomas. I mean, you're looking at just rolling hills and mountains of bomas, and we're like, well, we're here to preach them, and we don't know when we'll get to come back to this area. So you just start driving over everything, and
lions and tigers.
We just roll them over. It's no big. And so I mean, that's what it was like up there. And it was just incredible, absolutely incredible to see these.
Sounds
people.
like it's just like an untouched
it
section
is.
of
It is.
of Kenyan.
It is.
And we're gonna, when we go back, we're slowly gonna continue to kind of move forward from where we went. Actually, your guys' church, the Narusura church that you built for us, was the base of the mountains, the Loyada Hills, and then so that was like the progression. We built there, and then we just kept on going up and up and up and up.
Which the Narusura church, that church came with some opposition.
It did because of, I was telling you about how traditional they are.
Yep.
What they do is, the Narusura is a town where there's a ceremonial minята, and that's where the witch doctors are at, and all these men from all over the mountains, they come to that area to go through their ceremonies, going through manhood, spit and milk, all this kind of stuff that they do. And so when we were there, we were able to preach for the minята. However, we got run off. But we were able to hit a lot of the other bomas. And when we finally built that church, there was a group of Marani, which Marani are the Maasai warriors, who went to, I actually called you and asked to pray over that because they came to uproot the church. And the pastor was in the church basically praying, and they were surrounding the building, getting ready to
tear it down.
And I don't, I eventually got a call from the pastor and was like, listen, they just left. So the church is actually doing great. There's many members that are there right now, but that kind of was the epicenter of what's going on in Loita, because Narusra is a relatively large town that you don't have in the Loita Hills.
Yeah.
So all those guys, they come down here. That's why the Minyatta's there.
Yeah.
So that was the start kind of our Loita expansion.
So it's a little bit of the mecca of that
Yeah.
style of
Yeah.
stuff.
It
which,
is.
I mean, you want to hit that spot because it's obviously where you have a lot of traffic and
A lot
it's
of
also
people.
a lot of people. But I get how the opposition, especially when the gospel comes in, it does turn things upside down. It
Yeah.
always has.
Yeah.
Men like to control.
Yep.
And God's
Yeah.
in control.
Yeah.
So that's a struggle to let go
Yeah.
for
Yep.
sure. So here's the next question: like, what are you seeing as your next needs? Moving forward, we've talked about before that you guys like to use like solar powered Bible translation. You guys are in need constantly of different fabrics or things that you can
Yeah.
use for clothing or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
what food? I mean,
Yeah.
but obviously, you maybe another church. Like where?
Yeah.
What do you need? What are you looking at?
our two biggest needs, and Erica, if you want to.
Definite church. I mean, church planting
Churches.
is still the largest
It
thing.
is.
You jokingly before we started said 10, and we've even said like if we had money, we could build like 30 churches right now.
Yeah.
And so it's just that's such a blessing though, because I said before before we started, ministry begets ministry. So like as we go out into these areas, well then we're given land.
Yeah.
And so, but we're given land in a couple different places. So, you do one week of ministry in an area and you already have a need now for like 2 or 3 churches in that area.
Yeah.
And they walk to church. So, these need to be you try to get them relatively close to where people are. So anyway, church planting, we have so many areas that are in need of a church.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have our students coming in as well, middle of January. That's why we're going in, getting everything ready. Our students come in that they'll be going in to plant or to pastor those churches. So that's why church planting is so important. But yes, those solar powered audio Bibles.
Yeah,
Game changer.
they're key
Yeah.
because
Game
the
changer.
Maasai language actually just became written. It's been an oral language for
That is crazy.
years and years and
It's
years.
crazy.
So it just became written, and so a lot of Maasai don't know how to read Maasai.
Well, yeah, if it just got created.
Yeah,
no.
they
Yeah.
just know how to speak it.
And
There
a lot of them
are,
aren't
and a lot of them aren't
educated.
educated. If they go to school, they learn how.
Yeah.
But most of them, especially when you're dealing with Loita Maasai, most of them don't know how to read. And so those solar Bibles are key because, you turn it on and it's at Genesis.
Yep.
And it just goes
It
on.
just goes. So, do they have like any? And this is maybe like insensitive or whatever. Do they use hand signals or anything nonverbal to communicate their language? Is there a way that they talk nonverbal at all? I was just wondering if they
I'm
had
trying to think if
shorthand
they do.
or symbols or anything. Because in my mind, I'm going like,
How do they?
could they leave a note if they leave and they didn't tell anybody? If they write something,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was just trying to think of.
I don't
'cause that is
know.
crazy to try to
it's-
operate without a written language.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
That's
Yeah.
nuts.
And for the
That's-
longest time, it's Swahili. So, Kenya is composed of 42 different tribes. Each
Okay.
tribe has their own language, but Swahili is
Is the root.
National.
is like the national
Okay.
language. And then so if people needed to write a message, they wrote it in Swahili.
So
If they could write.
if
it.
is
they
this
could write.
kind of like an accent or a difference between like British English and American English?
No, it's like
or
a
is it
different
completely-
language.
No, it's like
It would be
English
different
like-
and-
alphabet.
It would be
different
like us
sounds.
learning Spanish.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's got some roots,
Yeah.
but very
Yeah.
And it has a totally different sound. Like with Swahili, I can hear somebody speak Swahili and I can hear like when a word stops and starts. Maasai, I have no
clue.
idea.
Yeah.
It's its own thing. And they and like he was saying, when we go into those areas where we've been going, most of them have never been to school. So they don't even know Swahili.
Yeah.
They just know Kima.
Yeah.
And so these audio Bibles, it's amazing because we'll go to an area and they're not as cheap as like a regular Bible. So we don't give them out to every person. We give one to the Boma, and we usually give it to like the oldest person or whatever, and say, okay, this is for your family. And when we get it out, we show them, and we have our translator show them and explain and turn it on. And I can't describe to you the look on their face, and they just light up because they just got saved, and now they're given the tool to say, this is what you do now. This
Yeah.
is how you actually have a relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because if you can imagine, you've never heard of Jesus, you've never seen a white person, you've
Yeah.
never any of that, and they come, they share Jesus, you give your heart to Jesus, you just had this incredible experience, maybe they got healed supernaturally, whatever it was, And then we're like, okay, we love you. We pray with them. And that's it.
Yeah.
And you're going, okay, now what? You
Now
know?
what do I do?
And so to have this Bible, and also because we can't always just plant a church immediately right after. It may take a year. And so there's that gap of time. So to have a Bible in their hands where then they can go and learn and have this relationship with God with right then and there is just
So you start
priceless.
in Genesis, though? You don't
Yeah,
go to
well,
John?
you can.
They
can skip around.
Now they're going to get to numbers, man.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Right.
straight
What is
to
going-
numbers.
What is
Yeah.
going on?
You want to
But
get
I wanted to share a quick testimony on that. This last, in our Loida ministry, when we were passing out those solar Bibles, I passed it out to the village elder who had gone to school. But when I gave him that Bible, he actually pulled something out of his pocket, and he had a page of Scripture. And he goes, "I found this page in Scripture in town. I've had it for years, and it's all." The only part of the Bible I've ever had, and it was a page in Isaiah.
Oh.
And when I gave him that solar Bible, he just broke down, and I was like, "Man, now you got all of it." So those are just those solar Bibles are just. Awesome.
I know the Bible is something that we take for granted. The average
Right.
home has like 2.7 Bibles in America. Even if they don't follow Jesus, they
Right.
have some sort of grandma's
Right.
Bible. And I've read several different books. The Insanity of God is one of the ones that sticks with me. That the church that's underground in China has like meetings, and they'll have like one Bible
Yes.
between
And
all of them,
yep.
and they'll rip each
Yes.
book out,
Yeah.
and then every year they switch which book they get.
That's amazing.
So I'm always like, who got Philemon and
Right.
Jude? Like, I'm like,
We've got
here, guys. Here's one little page.
yeah.
That's right.
So, but
That's funny.
I think having that encouragement and having the opportunity to at least interact with God through His Word like that is a great blessing that we take for granted here, and definitely is something that the internet has even exploded even more.
Yeah.
Access to that. So,
Yeah.
well, let me just say this: like, I know the world has changed a little bit in the last. It has the cost of creating a church gone up for you guys? Like, it's like doubled here. So,
right.
like, so what are you guys seeing as like the cost of
Yeah,
getting one
it
of these churches
has-
in the ground?
It has gone up. I don't even remember the last time. It was 35, I think it was.
And then it went up to 38,
And
and
then
then now
now
it's
it's at
4,000.
4. Yeah.
And part of it is the wood. Like we can't use wood now because that's been
It's been outlawed. So you actually can't even do like charcoal fires. Like they won't let you cut down trees right now.
Wow.
I mean, the Maasai are still doing it because, the government's not going in the Loida Hills.
Yeah.
And, saying,
So you have to buy metal?
Fires?
Is that what you have to do?
Yeah, so
So
now
it's all
basically
metal.
everything. It used to be, the metal outside, but wooden beams and wooden trusses and things like that. But now it is
Steel.
It's steel because they've outlawed cutting down wood.
Yeah.
So
that's why it's part of it. But yes, and like you said, everything, food over there too,
Oh, it's
because
going
so
up.
much is imported. So food goes up here.
Well, and there's so many shortages and everything's catching up, and they're
Yeah.
saying it's going to be 1 to 5 years before everything catches up. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what? The Great Depression was 9 years, so you
Yeah.
can remember.
Right.
I only lived about 2. My grandma would look at me and go, "Yeah, buck up." So I definitely think that our church is going to do, and I know that I let you know off camera before we started that we're just about to start. In fact, this Sunday, our Blessed to Bless series that is just a concept that we've had at Kingsway. It's not a perfect system, but it's a way to engage our people to try to get them not to serve money, but to serve God, and to see that there is a way that when we give our hearts to God as much as our money. And so it really is a chance for our people to try to be generous, and we have generous people. And so I'm hopeful that, if you guys, and I know when we met 3 or 4 years ago, and we sat in the room over here, and you guys were just so fresh and green, but you had so much experience and so much fire, and it was a very encouraging meeting. And ever since then, every year, I feel like you guys have learned, and God has led you, and you've grown, and now you're parents, and we're going to get to that in just a second. And I want to break that down because it's so much fun. But I love hearing it. Like, if you could ask Kingsway in a humble way to partner with you, what would be your ask? Would you say, hey, we need this many Bibles, we need this many churches, and we'd love for you to aim for that? Is that I know that's like a but if you give us a goal, it doesn't mean we can't hit it, but I think there would just be a way that I feel like there might be a number of Bibles that you're like, hey, we got this many places in this area that love to be able to drop them off.
Yeah.
yeah.
First of all, thank you for even.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you
all
so
me,
much.
so you're
Yeah,
welcome.
I know.
It's all me.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm smiling facetiously if you're not watching the video.
Yes. But,
Yeah.
but we really are so thankful to even ask that is just, we are so appreciative. Like Maurice said, we could, church planting,
So
of course,
aim
is
for
huge.
30. Is that
Yeah,
what
30
you're saying?
churches next year. We always, this is just our goal. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what God has laid on our heart is to plant 7 churches a year.
7 a year.
And this year we
Yep.
were blessed to
We
plant 7
just hit.
churches. So,
And it was actually our first year.
Let's go.
Yeah, so-
That's so cool.
yeah.
We probably have to up it because the first 3 years, that was our goal, was 7 churches. And we could do it, but we
Seven's
did.
a good number.
it is. I mean, yeah,
is.
it's a great, yeah. That's
And
right.
this was our first year that we hit it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. So that's the thing that we
Yep.
feel like God has laid on
So
our
this
heart.
is overflow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So we so that's our goal. Of course, we're thankful for whatever.
Yeah.
With a little bit of context too with the Bibles. For that like one ministry trip where we bring a team and we go into the deep bush, we about 50 of those solar Bibles covered that area. And so that's a great
And how much
number.
are these Bibles?
They're like $34 and change.
Okay.
So a
Yeah,
piece
a piece.
at 50, at an order of I think 50, and then of course.
So it's like a couple grand to
Yeah.
get about 50
Yeah.
Bibles. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just throw this out there. If we could raise $10,000 for the African
goodness.
church,
Oh, yeah.
that would
Oh,
get
wow.
us 2 churches.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then that would get us 50 Bibles.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
something.
Well, it
close
would be,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the math's a little,
Yeah.
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 Ozark doesn't teach math, and dyslexia doesn't like math. But other than that, 4,000 per church,
Yes.
and then 2,000 for the Bibles.
That would be
be
incredible.
really fun. Now, what we're
That'd
going
be
to try to
incredible.
do, we'll launch this. This actually coming Sunday. We're doing the Tri-County Crisis Pregnancy Center
that's
in Aurora is
awesome.
expanding,
Oh,
so
wow.
we're trying to partner with them. We have Operation Christmas Child going, which
Yes.
is really, really fun. It's one of
Love
the
that.
easiest ways, I think, to touch hearts around the world and see change. And then we have Holiday Central, which is families in our town that are struggling to meet
Yeah.
needs for Christmas with winter clothing and food.
That's awesome.
And distribution. So we have three different ways that are local
Yeah.
/ global, and then we have that's the global outreach. So we're just like, hey, beyond our walls, let's not just give. Let's like see the gospel grow in
Yeah.
a really legitimate way. So it's kind of fun to have this campaign going. You're obviously won't be the only one, but I can't tell you how many people in our church will come up and go like, have you got the number yet? Do you know what they need? Do you know? And so
Oh, wow.
they're
Wow.
ready, and the anticipation is there. And I
Wow.
think it's exciting to be able to tell them in an intentional way what we're aiming for and what
Yeah.
we're going for. So now let's get to the
That's
most important
awesome.
part. We're gonna hit this. What's it like being parents, guys? I mean, come on now. This is there's like 3 of the most intense things you can do is like get married, move, and have a child.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you like doing all 3.
Yeah, that's
like,
right. That's right. And we moved and had a child within like a couple weeks.
We did.
So,
Yep.
but yes,
It's been incredible.
It's been amazing.
It's my expectations, I think, of what it was going to be. It didn't even touch it.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew that I was going to love Benaiah, but I had no idea that you could love something that much. And then I also thought it was going to be less screaming.
Yeah.
And so
You were wrong, my friend. You were wrong.
Yes.
Is that what she's doing? Or is
Yeah,
it
yeah,
the-
me. Yeah, I thought
that's
there
what
was
I
a lot
want
of
to do
screaming.
sometimes.
Yeah, no, but it has been it's one of those where, you work, as you work so hard to get them like down for a nap, and then you're like, he slept for a couple hours, and you're like, oh, hi, oh, I miss you, oh, So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been incredible, and for us to be able to come back to the U.S. to be here with our family was just such a blessing from God
Oh,
to be able to
yeah.
do that, and for us to be able to take time. We took the month of September off from traveling in ministry, and so. I mean, you don't a lot of times get to do that, especially Maurice as the dad. He didn't, you normally don't get to have that experience. So that's been sweet to just have the 3 of us get to have that time. And we, we had that wreck in June, and we should have lost him. I mean, there's no way that he should have lived through that. No way we should have lived through that, but especially him. And I remember when after we had gotten out of the hospital, but we were in the hotel in Nairobi. We had to stay there for follow-up appointments. And I was laying there, and thinking, it just so hit me that I couldn't wait to meet Benaiah, because he was going to forever be the miracle baby that was a constant physical reminder of God's faithfulness to us. And that's what's been so, just to have him, and when I am with him and see him and just, I don't know, it's just that sweet, like, gift from God,
They're
you know?
absolutely gifts from God.
Yeah.
The firstborn, I don't know how many kids you guys are going to have.
Yeah.
You guys make that own decision. But my firstborn, that was probably the coolest thing I think I've ever experienced. Just, I have a poster or like a frame thing in my room that's a sun stands still section from Joshua.
Yeah.
And it just felt like that type of a moment where you're like, this is outside of time. This is outside of a movement of natural. This is a deep expression of love, a deep gift that can't be fully understood.
No.
And it's completely a gift. It really does feel that way. And it is weird because she feels him for 9 months, and then you suddenly hold him and you're like, this is different.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. There was that panic moment too when you leave the hospital for the first time and you're like, we are all he has.
Oh, yes. Totally.
Yes. Well, and he was in the NICU. And so, you hate having all those, like, everything, him attached to everything. But then you're like,
it was a little comforting, though, because he always had a staff around him.
Yeah.
We could, like, sleep and they would feed him and stuff. And then all of a sudden we were out of the NICU and we're like, this is it. I was like, can I not buzz a nurse in here?
I remember one of the first nights with Jace in the hospital, they brought him back from the nursery and they said, hey, he needs to sleep in here. And we were both like dead tired, obviously physically. She was tired, and, like you probably were. And I was just emotionally dead. I was just kind of like, we've done it. And then it was like 3 a.m. and he started to cry. And it was like the biggest wake up call
of life.
Yes. You're like, oh, we're in it.
Yeah, that is official. Yes.
We're in it now.
We were on the way. I actually went into labor on Labor Day. So there's that. Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah,
you nailed it.
I nailed it. And it was funny because we were getting ready to leave to head, and Maurice is like, I don't know why, but for some reason in my mind, you were just always going to be pregnant. Like, we weren't like, and then there's this moment you're like, no, there's actually a baby coming at the end of this. Like, there is a life coming, and then he's here and you're like, oh my goodness, this really is real. This is happening. And and he'll be 7 weeks tomorrow. And I feel like in the last couple of weeks, finally have gotten in that, like, okay, now this is life. And
oh, that's
no
6 to 8
that.
weeks. That is the hardest. 6 to 8 weeks. Andy Samberg and Ryan Reynolds have a very similar line with babies where everybody tells you you're going to love it. It's like the greatest expression. And then the moment the baby's born, they're like, welcome to hell. And I was like, yes. A lot of screaming.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
I am so excited. I don't know if I think marriage in general rips the selfishness out of you, without your asking. Children do that to the nines.
Yes.
Like I don't know how many times I'm like, listen, I have an opinion that is so contrary to what you want right now, and I don't know how to tell you. So I'm just gonna give in again. You win over and over and over again.
That is so. That is so. We've already, definitely have experienced that where you're like, I've laid in bed asking Jesus, please let him just go back to sleep. Please. I know you love me too. Like, you just.
Like, well, and I don't know if we've experienced this because I'm sure she's much gentler and kinder, but every time I was about a year after our kid was born, I would look at my wife and I'd be like, oh, you're back. There was this other girl here. She was tired all the time, grouchy, and sometimes she was mean. And here you are.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So much.
That is so funny.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, you are a different person when you don't get sleep.
It's the same way with me. I mean, in that I told you when we were off camera, I begged for 4 hours. We begged for 4 hours.
Yeah.
We're like, just give us 4 hours in a row, please.
Like,
I need one REM cycle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you think you're tough, and then all of a sudden you have no sleep, and you realize how weak you really are. And that's where I was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I am so excited for you guys. I think the First Ministry is your home, and it's so fun to. I'm excited for the things you're going to get to experience because It's one thing to teach someone else's kids or someone else's
Yeah.
grandparents or someone else's brother and sister. It's
Yeah.
a very different thing when you look into the eyes of your own child and you realize you cannot control them.
Yeah.
You cannot determine their destiny,
Yeah.
even if everything you do to the best of your ability, they still have free will. And you just like Hosea, I think experience what it's like to be God the Father looking at his children, hoping they'll make the right choices, praying that they would, but at the same time,
yeah,
you can't control it. And it's a unique feeling of new faith where you're like, God,
totally.
please.
Oh.
I know they're not mine completely, but I feel like,
Yeah.
and it has been a healthy thing for my heart and soul, but also a very empowering thing to recognize, though.
I had that moment, I think it was even multiple times where you feel like you finally have maybe you can't ever have a complete grasp on it, but you have somewhat of a grasp of the Father's love for you. Yeah. And with having your own children, like, this is silly, but I was Benaiah doesn't like to be burped like mid feeding, you know, because he's like, I'm still hungry. And and so I had this moment, I think it was in the one of the times in the middle of the night recently, and I was burping him in the middle of a feeding, and he was just losing it. I mean, he was just doing everything he could he would rear back, stiffen up, and try to lay back, and he's just screaming, but I knew that he needed to be burped or he was going to be in pain, you know, all the things.
And you throw up all the food that he was hungry for.
Right, exactly. And so, and I had this moment of, not that every moment is this, spiritual,
that's exactly how it is.
But I had this moment of, I get it now, where God is like, I can be screaming, crying, and going, God, I know you love me, and I know you want me to do this, or, I can just be so upset, pouring my heart out to God, and he's like, yeah, but I need you to burp,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I need you to do
walk
this.
through this.
Yeah,
exactly.
And and there's been those moments, and just silly little things or minuscule things, but you're like, okay, that makes so much more sense now. Yeah, so that's been really cool.
I love how God uses, I think, children, and that's part of the reason why I think you need kids around.
Yeah.
A, they love better than we ever will most of the time, generously, without care. B, they teach you what love costs because you're like, gosh, to love you, I get nothing from you.
Yeah.
You are a pile of flesh that needs. You're a pile of needs. That's all you are. You literally don't even know who I am beyond like a tone of my voice.
Right.
And then on top of that, though, it just teaches you what deep love in return can do. When a child is loved well, they grow, they learn, they become good things. And I just think that's beautiful. So this next year is going to be an adventure. Taking this kiddo back, living in the bush with a child is going to be a unique thing. Cloth diapers only, and
there's no toilet to clean them in, so you can't do that. We just have a cho. So
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I think you guys are going to have a great time. I know you grew up in Africa too, so there's a part of you, I'm sure you're like, this is really cool. Your son's going to get a chance to be like, grew up in Africa.
Yeah, but I'm nervous because I've heard the stories of what they did.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah, like hiding in hyena holes. Like, do you know what's in hyena holes? Like not hyenas all the time. Like, but sometimes hyenas. But like snakes, all of that. And they used to. Him and his brother would go and hide in them to try to like spear animals as they ran over.
And we're hoping wildebeest are about to run over us, and we can.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, as soon as we found out we were having a boy, I was like, because that's what I thought of. And so I'm a little nervous about that.
Don't worry, he knows all the secrets. He knows all the things this guy's going to do. Let's get it all figured out.
But it will be an adventure for sure.
It will be.
I'm excited to hear about it and see what God's going to do. I think it's going to be brilliant. Well, it's been fun to catch up, and I know a lot of people that watch this podcast may know you personally or may not know you at all. And I love hearing about the work that you guys are doing in Kenya. I love knowing that you're not only preaching God's word, but you're providing a place of community, and then you're also teaching and lifting up leaders to come in and nurture and help them grow. The process is a healthy one. I think it's something that God has obviously stepped in and blessed. And I think your faithfulness as a couple and as a team has been part of that plan. It's exciting to be able to partner with you and to do that. And I am so excited to see what our people are going to do to hopefully be generous and the kingdom can move forward.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
right? That's
Amen.
what we want.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's the thing. We're going to put some links in the description if they want to come and look at your guys' page or figure out maybe individually a little bit more about you. Do you have anything that you would want to share about that? Is there a way, or is it just your website that would be the best
Yes.
for them to check out?
Yeah, our website would be the best thing. We also have a ministry Facebook page, and that's our Facebook page is kind of like our running newsletter. So
Yeah.
I mean, most of our stuff, and then we do send out a newsletter once a
Yeah.
month. But that's actually where you would probably see both of those things.
I love your newsletter, and that definitely look at some of the pictures and the stories that are in
Yeah.
there are powerful.
Yeah.
And especially, like you said, Facebook is where the updates are. So it's
Yeah.
things like the car crash that happened,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
a lifeline to I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah, that'd be a way, and we'll try to link those in the description so people can check. So
Thank you so
and
much.
Kingsway, it's exciting. I hope this has been an informative thing, and be looking for the campaign that's starting here on October 31st, Bless to Bless. You'll find a drop-down tab inside our giving to the African church that you would be able to donate. And if you want to talk to them more, make sure to check out their links. I'm sure you could Facebook message them and get more
Yeah.
details if you
Yeah.
wanted. So
Yeah.
hit the like button and share it if you think somebody would benefit from this, or leave a review on our podcast or Apple or Google podcasts or Spotify. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan behind the camera. Or Podbean. Well, you guys, thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for being here. You too. Have a
thank
great,
you.
glorious day.
Thank
Thank you.
We'll see you later.